With Lenny trapped in the recesses of David's brain, the next trick is to try and remove the Shadow King permanently. But can they do it without killing David? And even if they can, what is David's future going to be like without his lifelong companion? It's the big season finale of the FX original series, Legion, Chapter 8. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review of the big season finale of Legion. Oh, so good. So, of course, spoilers ahead. If you haven't seen the episode, what are you doing? Go watch it. Come back. We'll be here. All right, so let's get into things. Again, great episode this week, really tying things all the way back forward. I mean, bringing Clark the Interrogator back from the very beginning. All of those seeds are coming back, being dealt with, and moving forward, establishing everything for what we are going to see for next season. And this episode really kind of had three primary focuses. We had, of course, David getting rid of Lenny, the whole dealing with his sickness. Then we had David trying to work with Division 3, trying to form a peace accord between the mutants and the government, let's just say. And then, of course, we had the return of Oliver to the land of the living and reconnecting with his wife. Well, almost, sort of, for a little while there at least, before things all shift out. So, and first off, I'm going to say the SWAT column, that was awesome. Just kill everyone. No, we're not. Shoot, column of squirming guys. Again, and I like not dead, which is important dealing with the whole peace thing we'll talk about in a minute. But I just wanted to throw that out real quick because that was way cool. So let's start things off talking about getting rid of his disease, of David getting rid of Lenny. And I think there's really an important connection point right there with the conversation that David has with Sid in the forest when he's talking about his schizophrenia. And really mentioning that the trick with schizophrenia is that as a disease, it tries to convince you that you don't have it. And really it's also setting up his concern there is what happens in the world afterwards. You know, he's got these great options of you have these powers and these abilities, and therefore you are not crazy. And as someone who has been in a mental institution for 6 years, has dealt with voices and insanity and things like that for much of his adult life, the prospect of being free with that is almost more frightening, I think, than anything else, that this thing that you've been living with is no longer going to be hanging over your head. What does your future have with that? And so in that way, the disease is starting to convince David even that the possibility of a future without it doesn't exist. It's that tricky point that I think he's really trying to hone in on right there. And that really connects perfectly with Farouk, with Lenny, the Shadow King. Because, of course, like any creature, he doesn't want to die. And he knows he's on his last legs. And he tries to get through with David. I mean, there's those few moments where the battery pack is starting to wane from the halo, and you can see David starting to hear little voices. We have Lenny sort of creeping out from the recesses of his psychology. But he can't, David's fighting back, but there's that other option. There's that connection with Sid. Because, as Lenny intimates, because Sid and David had switched bodies, there is now that connection. And of course, Sid cares very much for David, so that is the perfect point for Lenny to go after and basically say, her pitch. And I love the line about unmaking. Have you ever tried to unmake soup? It is the perfect way to kind of hit those ideas, because it's like you can't unmix things once they are mixed. And that's what that's what Lenny is going for. It's like, I've been here for so long, you can't get rid of me unless I want to go. Otherwise, I will kill David on my way out. Now, whether that is true or not is kind of irrelevant. I mean, as we get through the whole extraction process, which was beautifully done, we do seem to get to that point where it's like Lenny is fighting back. Lenny will try and kill David before leaving. And that's why we had that shot there at the end where it was David choking himself. It wasn't Lenny going after him. It was him doing it. Lenny, the Shadow King, is making David kill himself, using those last bits of psychic energy and connection to say, well, if I'm going to go, you're going to go with me. So yes, it is possible. We don't know because, of course, Sid interrupted things, but that was why that whole push was for, is if you're going to get rid of me, what other way do I have to get out? And that is to create fear in the person who loves you. Hey, if you don't agree with me, if we don't make a deal, then I will take out David. So it was the back and forth, that setup I thought was just beautifully done. And then, of course, the interior shots where we have Lenny literally falling apart. The second line, your Lenny mask is coming off. It was perfect. It was really just showing that sign where Lenny is losing control, losing power, losing that connection, and it's physically manifesting there, which is only going to make her strike out more and more. And why we had in that dying position when it looked like he was finally out, there was that final push and grab to see if I'm going to use whatever power we have left to take out David. And we had the creepy arms coming up and all, was perfect. But I do want to say the whole scene, and beautifully done to Pink Floyd's Breathe too, where they are excising Farouk out of his mind, out of his memories, I thought was just beautifully done. As we get to see literally the memories, the film, like David in his mind watching the film of his life, going backwards from now, reaching all the way back until the very beginning of Farouk's manifestation. Just going through and seeing those memories, and then pff, Farouk is gone, and the next one, pff, Lenny is gone, and just over and over. It was beautifully done. And the music in there with Pink Floyd and Breathe perfectly synced in with it. It was magnificently done. The visuals on this was just a lot of play towards old film styles. We had the German film references last week with the whole silent thing. Then we had the harpsichord and opening with the new colors and this. Plus, I mean, just all the different film styles, all of the colors, all of that presentation, I think, is just really magnificently done. Really just plays a whole new visual storytelling level to this show. But then we even had at that last moment there, just before, well, it seemed like Farouk was going to be excised. It was before the little fight back, where David just so calmly talking with Lenny, who is falling apart, pustule, can barely speak. But David there at that point, just so calm, reflecting back at the events of his life and asking the question, what is my life going to be like without you? You have been with me the whole time, this constant voice in the back of my head, the urging. Yes, it was horrible and awful and drove her mad and was completely used. But like anything, as he mentioned, is the whole like phantom limb idea. If you have a limb and you cut it off, there is phantom limb pain. People will feel that limb. And if you can imagine having that for your entire life, they're really hitting on some really interesting points here. And I'm glad that they spent those extra moments to it. And it wasn't just like, hey, we're free, we're done. But we're really dealing with these heavy psychological identity issues, which the show has done so good on. Really asking those big questions. Am I sane? Will this fix me? And if I am fixed, what really is my life going to be like? And is that more frightening than living and dealing with these things that I have? You know, it's the devil you know idea. Better deal with the devil you know than one that you don't. So it was just beautifully done. And I would love those just little quiet moments between the two of them of kind of having that last little connection before really saying, you know, goodbye, because you're this psychotic parasitic entity attached to me and trying to kill me. But we have had a life, so let's just acknowledge that. Now, of course, the other story going along throughout this episode was David trying to make peace with Division 3, or Division 1, or I guess they're all different divisions of the government. And I think that's why we had that opening of the episode where we got to see kind of the remnants of what happened to Clark and his recovery. And nice diversified family there. You know, he's got a nice husband, little adopted kid. I mean, that was kind of cool. And it's great because it removes that giant, you know, archetypical evil entity as now we see, oh, these are diverse people that have love and family and relationships, and it makes them more human. I love the scene in with his when he's getting assigned to desk work and he just pushes, no, I'm going out on the field. I mean, the whole back and forth, beautiful. Really seeing that commitment to going back and stopping the mutants, and all of that lasts, like I said, about 3 seconds till we have that tower of SWAT men. And it's just shit, shit indeed, Clark. But it brings up those important points of, do we want to continue having this war? Because David, again, has been warring so long within himself. Now he does have that prospect of peace. It's like, do we want to keep doing this, repeating these things over and over again? So yeah, of course, Melanie is upset about it, and Autonomy doesn't trust them. I mean, this makes sense. These are the archetypes. And even Melanie trying to use David to fight back. No, we can't read his mind, do these things. Even those moments when Melanie went in and had that brief discussion with Clark, it's like, you should be afraid because your time's going to be up. The day of the dinosaur is all over with. That only perpetuates the war, like David said. If we never think about anything different, then war is never going to stop. And I think, in some ways, whether it was motivated by Lenny or by Sid himself, opening up and letting Clark know what it was they were fighting, what is going on inside of David. And then David looking at Clark, or Sid looking at Clark and saying, you do like him. There's a part of you that do. We are making these human connections. These are the reasons why we want to change. If they don't know each other, if they don't trust each other, if there's no interaction, there is going to be no reason for peace. The only way that you're going to find peace is through discussion and compromise and identification with each other. Which is why we had that last great scene. I mean, I was worried when Carrie ran out of the interview room and left the door open with Clark in there. It was like, why? You were the one that's so worried about Carrie handing him a glass of water, put it on the table, but you're going to leave the door open when you run out. That was like, but it did provide that opportunity for Clark to step up as Lenny does his big escape, and again, beautifully done. Escape there, jumping from body to body, was just, it was beautiful. But you know, Clark does his attack. He is at that moment on their side. He can see the reality of what it is that they are fighting against, and suddenly seeing that there is a bigger enemy. There is something greater to go against. Now the differences they have with the Summerland crew seems very peaceful and mild by comparison, especially if we have a powerful mutant willing to work with you to fight against them. So that was great. So we had that final little moments there of when David goes and picks him up as, we got to talk, we got to figure things out. It's like, yes, I will talk to my people. After that, there wasn't even a moment. There wasn't, well, let's see what we can do. So like the discussion beforehand, well, I'm not even in the higher levels of management. No, it's like, great, I'll talk to my people and we'll have a discussion and we'll get this sorted out. So yes, horrible thing about Lenny escaping like that, but on the other hand, it might create some peace and cooperation between two warring forces and give them a potential future to look forward to. Then, of course, there was Oliver's return, which we saw at the end of last episode. But here's sort of Melanie trying to reconnect. And, I mean, first of all, I love Oliver. Love him. Glad he's back. Really looking forward to season 2 now with him. But it's kind of, you know, it's that bittersweet connection. Because, of course, Melanie's trying to reconnect. And Oliver's going to have his little remembering issues. It's not going to come very quick. And it's sad, you know, you can feel Melanie's really trying to reach out. I mean, even when Clark makes the mention about her husband, and she's like, he'll show up. You don't get to say, he's in the next room, but he doesn't really remember everything. But that last moment when Oliver is in the power thing, hitting up all of the wires and connectors, and he has that moment of realization of, Melanie. And it was so sweet. But you know from watching these shows, the minute you get that kind of connection and realization, something bad is going to happen. And of course, it does, with Sid finally being scared enough of David going to die, of Sid, or of Lenny taking out David beforehand, goes in, kisses him, and therefore releases, because you've got Sid's body switching powers, but in this case, it just transferred the Shadow King into her. And then I love the whole hitting Carrie in the head and switching bodies there, and then knocking Carrie down, and then running out. And I don't know what the big power attack between David and Lenny Carey was. Sort of a fire and ice electrical power thing going back and forth. It was beautiful to see. I want to see more of that. But obviously that kicked Shadow King out, who ran right into Oliver. So now Oliver, again, very powerful mutant in his own right. And now he's got the Shadow King infesting in his brain. Now, the one positive thing that we can think of, and this is the one I thought might have been the mistake of the Shadow King when he jumped out of David and into Sid and then into Carrie, is it was difficult to remove Farouk out of David because he had been there his whole life. Like Carrie had said, he knew every pathway, every ins and outs, all of the circuit ways and back doors in. With anyone new that he is manifesting, though, he doesn't have those experiences. So because Oliver is such a powerful mutant, he should be able to hold on to his identity for at least a while before being overwritten completely by Shadow King. So he's got a chance again to hold on. Melanie's been waiting for a while to come back. Now he came back. She's going to have to wait a little bit longer. It was the Rescue David for this season. Next season it's going to be Rescue Oliver. But it should be easier to extract Farouk, the Shadow King, from Oliver, because he just hasn't had as much time as he had in with David. So I think that's one of the big positive ends that we're going to have. And of course, real quickly, that last shot through the car where we just see Oliver and then the camera pans and then suddenly appears in the passenger seat of Lenny. It was just, God, so much wonderful camera work in this. It's just awesome. All right, few things here. One, David constantly repeating, you don't have to be afraid. I don't think he was talking to Clark so much about talking maybe to himself. Like I said, about you don't have to be afraid of the future. I mean, there was a statement, you don't have to be afraid of peace. You don't have to be afraid of change. You don't have to be afraid of the future. I think he's implying all of these statements, but it's sort of a repetition because I think it was only half to Clark. I think a lot of that was maybe to himself, possibly even to Lenny about getting out and being gone. But yeah, I think there was a lot of layers to that particular statement. When things were kind of going to hell there during the extraction and Sid was like, David, and ran out, Melanie almost stopped her for a moment, but then she did let her pass. And I think that is the connection with Oliver that we have right there, is because Melanie had spent so much time waiting for Oliver to get back, holding on to that hope, that when Sid ran out and she could see her reacting to, I must save my man from being lost, I don't think Melanie could have stood in her way right there. I thought that was really kind of a good female relationship connection right there, is I know what you're feeling and I know what you're doing. And if I had the opportunity back then, I would have done the same thing. So I thought that was a great little just quiet moment between the two of them. The image of David floating there, all serene, cross-legged, lotus position, meditating, reminded me very much of Doctor Strange. Always see Doctor Strange meditating in that position. Anyway, was cool, very powerful, but, with recent Marvel properties, that jumped right to mind. All right, there's a few odds and ends that weren't entirely cleaned up in this season that were sort of laid out there. One is what did the stars say? We never really found out about that, and I think that's something we're going to be approaching in towards season 2. And I think that applies to the it that Lenny is searching for. Remember last episode, she was going after Amy, asking, where is it? Where is it? And I was trying to figure out, is this some part of David's brain? Is this some recess? Is this some, trick that she can use? But in that final scene where she is driving off with Oliver, and Oliver says, where should we start looking first? There does seem to be something that Lenny is looking for, and I think that is going to be the thrust of next season. I mean, first of all, we're going to have Oliver a little unhinged and possessed out there, and I've loved seeing Oliver. Him on the other side as an antagonist, I think, could be awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. But I am really curious about the it that they are going after. And part of that might relate to the post-credit scene. You guys did sit through the credits and watch the little post-credit scene. It's Marvel. They're in all the shows now. But that little Pokeball that came and beamed David inside. What is that? Of course, that's how we're going to be starting off next season as well. And there's a couple of possibilities, I think. One, the simplest is it's something from Division 3 or Division 1 or Division 2, one of the divisions that's coming after him. There was that statement that the generals said before, send in the Equinox. He said, send in the Peacemaker. And I wasn't thinking that's a Peacemaker missile. They're going to take out everyone. Then he said, send in the Equinox. And we didn't really see anything after that. So perhaps that's what that ball is. David has been wanting to talk to the divisions to try and make a peace proposal or something. And perhaps this is the way that they want to transport him to them in a safe-ish manner so they can try and be less afraid of him blowing up their brains or anything like that. So that is a possibility. Or, of course, it could be something else. New antagonist, main antagonist for next season as well. There is a thought that did jump in my head that I am going to throw out there, and that it could be something from the Mojo-verse. Now, we had thrown out Mojo early on as a possibility for what the yellow-eyed devil with yellow eyes was. Awesome that it was Shadow King. I love that. But you know, there was still that kind of hope of Mojo in there. And Mojo is a very strange creature, other dimensional, leader of the Mojo-verse. But he's kidnapped a lot of X-Men over the years to fight in his gladiatorial rings. And considering that Mojo is really kind of a parody commentary on television executives and television programming, that would be a really interesting concept to bring into this, to have this whole otherworldly dimensional television show created by this super creepy creature that David is being sucked into. It's kind of extreme, but certainly separate out from what's going on with Lenny and Oliver, unless what the stars say is some sort of, I don't know, alien ship or thing that came down, and that's what Lenny is looking for. I don't know. I mean, again, we start going off into the big realms of Marvel possibilities here. But that is one thought, that could be, because it seemed to be advanced technology for anything that we have seen with any of the divisions or anything like that. It seemed to be kind of beyond human, but again, it could be high tech. But if it's otherworldly, I think that would be an interesting thing. Just that possibility of the commentary on television programming and shows and stuff, I think, would be a real interesting realm for them to dive into. So it could be Division 3, extreme on the other end possibility, Mojo and the Mojo-verse, or something in between where it's just some other new antagonist that we haven't met. So, but what we're doing a lot in this episode really is laying the groundwork, the bits and pieces that we're going to be picking up when Season 2 starts. All right, so I think that covers everything. I mean, really, it was just a visual feast. There is going to be a Season 2. It has already been renewed, but this is the end. For right now, it's going to be like another year, so I just want to put out a big thank you to all of you that have signed up, that have watched these reviews, that have subscribed because of them. Really appreciate it. I've had a great time with this show. I hope that you guys have too. And there's a lot of new exciting stuff coming forward that I hope that you will stick around with. Coming up, we have this Sunday is the end of Black Sails. The big series finale is on Sunday night, as well as the season finale of The Walking Dead. And then next Tuesday, the 4th, we will have the return of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's their last arc, Agents of Hydra. Really looking forward to that. And then at the end of April 30th, we have American Gods premieres on the Starz Network. I'm going to be covering that. That's from a sequence of books. Looked really interesting, great visual storytelling. That's what sort of grabbed me. Really looking forward to that. And then if we go on into the summer, we're going to have Fear the Walking Dead, I believe, starts June 25th. And then we have Game of Thrones returns on July 12th. And then looking forward into the fall, we'll have the Inhuman series, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. if it comes back for season 5, hopefully it will. And Mr. Robot comes back in October also, along with the next season of Walking Dead. So a lot of stuff for next season. As usual, if you enjoyed my ranting and raving here, go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, comments, what did you think of the series? What are you looking forward to for season 2? And what are your thoughts on what that flying Pokeball was? Pretty sure it's not Pokemon Go. That would really put the show in a new, different direction. But anyway, whatever you guys' thoughts, ideas, comments, throw those down in the section below. Now, you can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Darren Jakes. And then what we'll do is I will throw up our latest review for Black Sails right here. You can check that out. Big season finale, series finale this Sunday. So, I'm going to say goodnight. I am D, and I'm out of here. You guys take it easy. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.